So, hello and welcome to the 1% podcast. Today we have Mr. Scott Mathieson. I'm not sure I get that right sometimes. Is that right?
Mathieson,
Mathieson. Get it right. Now, myself and Scott have been working together for the last nearly 7 months now. By my account, Scott's been on quite the journey from when we first spoke to where he is today. Again, by my account, thriving, smashing life and looking and feeling great. So he's got quite a cool story to talk through, where he was to where he is today. And like all the gents that I get on the podcast, whether they've worked with me or not, I don't think it really matters, because I think Scott's story in terms of where he was, how he was feeling, and then what he's done to move forward and turn it around. Sadly, it's a very common narrative. Lots of guys out there with all the trappings of a fantastic life, but just not feeling the best physically, mentally. But then recognising it doesn't need to be a huge life overhaul to address that. It's those small compounding little 1% that can have a big impact on how we feel. Less from me, though. I want Scott to do more talking than me, because I can waffle. Before we jump off, Scott, do you want to just introduce yourself? Who you are, what you do, a bit about you?
Sure, and thanks for having me on, Luke.
Pleasure.
My name's Scott Mathieson. I work up in the city. I work in corporate finance in an investment bank. So I've got a busy work schedule, busy career. Have a very young family back at home. So beautiful wife, Nicola, from New Zealand. And we've got a 5-month-old baby, which is our daughter, who is our first child. So that's been a big change, sort of, which has happened as we've been working together.
Yeah, so I think very, very busy, lots going on. And as you know, the having a baby, which is equal parts the best thing in the whole world ever, but equally equal parts challenging, right? And so that definitely sets the cat amongst the pigeons, and that kind of happened almost right near the start of us working together, right? So that being said, let's kind of jump off the conversation, and I think best place to start would be rewinding about 7 months into the past. I think you reached out about, was it sort of November, December sort of time?
Yeah, I think it was early December, I think it was.
Yeah. Early December 24, reached out for a conversation, and then we ultimately decided to do some work together. What was going on with you back then that you decided to reach out, speak to somebody like me, ultimately wanted to make some changes?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, if we roll back to then, and I guess also before then, if you sort of all through 2024, so Nicola and I had been working to have a family for quite a long time. It'd been quite a stressful process in many, many ways. It had gone on for a number of years. And I think over time that had worn both of us down, and certainly myself down. Alongside that, obviously, work just, carries on. You don't get any leeway from
reprieve,
work
no.
when real life gets in the way. And also on top of that, with all of that, I hadn't been looking after myself, physically, nutritionally, anything. So I think where I was in December was I was probably at my lowest ebb I'd ever been at. I just felt pretty crappy. I knew I was unfit. I was not in a good headspace. I was struggling more at work than I ever, struggled with before. And just things at work which would never usually wind me up were winding me up. It was just a lot of things. But then also on top of that, what had happened by December is that Nicola and I had, got pregnant. We were well into the pregnancy by then. And so when I called you in December, we were sort of 2.5, 3 months out from due date. And I think where I was I was aware that with everything that had gone before, I was in a bad place. I hadn't sort of sorted it out, and I was conscious that we had this sort of looming date and on the horizon of a baby arriving, and that comes with good and bad. And I didn't know, like you said, the cat amongst the pigeons. You don't know quite what's going to happen until it happens, and it was our first child. So I was very conscious that I wanted to get myself in a better place, be feeling better, be ready to be the best dad and husband, as we entered into this new phase of our life. And also, I guess on top of that, beyond just that immediate need to sort it out for the near term, I think it was also that, having a baby on the horizon, it was that sort of, thing going off in my head going, God's sake, Scott, you need to get fit. You need to look after yourself. You need to be here for a long time. You need to be, available and a good dad and up for everything and all the rest of it. So there were lots of things that were coming together, but the starting point was that I was not in a good place with everything that had gone before and wanted to address it.
Yeah. And what you're describing there, as I said just earlier, I think is a very common, sadly, it's a common thing where work, life, a multitude of external factors have impacted your ability to kind of take care of yourself. And then because you're not taking care of yourself, you're showing up in a multitude of areas, as you don't like, and then things externally which would normally be normal or okay or copable with, or you're resilient to, start to impact you in a negative way. Then we throw in on top of that the fact you're about to have a baby. There's I know conceptually that having a baby isn't going to make life any quote unquote easier.
Yeah.
But not only that, I want to be a great dad, and I want to set a good example, and I want to have good habits, and actually I want to be around forever. So I'm not stressed out in my head and unhappy and whatever else. And so all of that you got playing in. And look, to be totally fair as well, I know you and Nicola had your struggles in terms of conceiving and getting Lexi now, and that is incredibly stressful. Not to the same level, but I had a similar experience with. I mean, we were lucky; we've got 3 kids, but like each of those, there was a kind of that kind of component, and that takes a huge mental, psychological, and emotional toll. And so all of that compounding, there's part of that sort of, I'm sure, 50-50 of that. I'm so happy this is happening, but I feel shit, and I'm not happy, and I should be happy, but I'm not because I feel shit, and all of that compounding. Where it leaves you just feeling a bit like, well, yeah, I'm not feeling great, but what do I do? I know I need to address it, and I don't want this to kind of perpetuate or continue. Does that sound right?
Absolutely right. Yeah, hit the nail on the head. That's exactly it.
And so we had a good conversation. You decided to join the process. By all accounts, a lot of work has happened since then up to as we sit today. You've also had a baby in the middle of it, which is amazing. And I think something I said to you, I said, look, because I think maybe part of you like, I want to do this, but is it definitely the right time? And I said, honestly, Scott, it is. And because, and I think hopefully you can speak to this in a second. You realise that actually, sometimes when you're not feeling your best, like you're describing, baby coming or not, because we're so overwhelmed with things, I think we, the royal we, you, think that, oh my God, this is just another thing I may be about to commit to. How on earth am I going to fit that in? And for me, the way I like to work, at least, or the way I think anyone should work from change, is that that's the wrong way to look at it. It's like, to be transparent, my life's a bit fucked right now and I need to sort it out. What I need is help to address what's going on within it, not just bolt on more stress. Does that make sense? I think that's a really important differential.
It does massively. And I think exactly, through the conversation we had together back in December, I think that's exactly it, which was, I was sort of thinking, am I trying to layer another thing on top here when I don't seem to have much more, capacity? But actually where I was I needed a reset, and I knew I needed to sort of unwind some of this stuff and put in place new building blocks, whatever it was, practices, habits. But I didn't know what those were. I didn't know how to implement them. And I think also through the last 6-7 months working with you and through the program and listening to all the other guys on the program and all their different situations and all the different reasons they're in it and all the different things going on in their lives, is there's no perfect time to address this stuff. If you do nothing, nothing's going to change. You've just got to start making changes. And it doesn't have to be some sort of like landslide. Everything changes in over a course of a fortnight. Everything's revolutionized. It's just a steady start doing something, and you go from there. And I think so. And I think that's exactly what's happened on the course with you. Is I knew I needed to do something. I knew I didn't know what to do, but we've worked together and put those building blocks in from the start, and it's been a gradual process. And yeah,
what you said there in terms of that, if you don't change, nothing changes. I think that's the point. It's that. Now, I'm not a PT, right? Or what we do, some of it, there's a physical component to it. But it's like when someone might go to a PT and go, they have a conversation. I'm not going to start with you yet. Why? I'm going to get a bit fitter first. What? How's that going to work if you don't know what you're doing?
I'd made loads of those sort of false starts myself, like sort of trying to trick myself into believing that if I just started doing X, Y, Z a bit more often, everything would fall into place. And it was
Like, imagine saying to a golf coach, like I was going to say there, you go, right, so I'm going to start with you, but I'm just going to work on my swing and make it a bit better before we start, yeah?
Yeah.
What the fuck are you on about?
Yeah, exactly.
By the way, I'm not saying because I'm some perfect coach. I just mean conceptually, I think we can get our head in the weeds and recognise that, maybe I need to sort things out a bit better before I can make a change. It's like, no, you need to make a change. That's the problem. But I think where most of us start, to be fair to all of us, and it's not belittling anyone with where they're at, when you do feel overwhelmed, you've got so much on, like we said, because you can't quite see the wood for the trees, and perhaps maybe some of the old ways that you've tried to help yourself are quite grand and sweeping, you're like, what on earth am I meant to do? It's not possible. But like you said, we start small and build, then you recognise it is achievable, and there isn't one perfect magic time. Arguably, the more hectic and messed up things are, probably the more of a reason why you need to, right?
Get started, yeah, definitely.
So let's again maybe fast forward to as we sit today, Scott. By all accounts, I think you're in a great spot. Done a lot of work. What have been, I guess, then your key learnings and takeaways now, having come through the last 7 months, done a load of work to change what we're describing where you were. So as you sit here today, feeling better about yourself, healthier, fitter, mentally in a better place, work, feeling good. Like what have been the constituent parts that have helped you sort of get to that stage?
So there's obviously quite a lot to it, I guess, over time. But it goes back to what I said a minute ago. I think the starting point is its building blocks, and those building blocks don't actually have to be very complicated or very, what's the word, like demanding almost, just to start putting in a base level of habits and behaviors. And you put structure. It's a bit like when you're at work and, if you're crazy at work, what do? You put structures in place to manage the 14 things that are meant to be going on.
Yeah.
And it's a similar sort of a thing in life, as you put in little structures and little habits and little things, so that it can be quite small adjustments that just buy you a little bit more time when you start doing things. And so for me, look, it's been the most important elements of all of this for me have definitely obviously been getting into the habit of doing exercise and making that happen, and making that almost a sort of non-negotiable. Learning about nutrition a bit, and learning about the impact nutrition has, without being sort of obsessed by it. And look, different people I think operate in different ways, but for me, it's never been about sort of being absolute calorie counting every single meal and every single thing I do. But it's about having a much better idea of what the impact of what you eat and drink does. I think for me also the other piece, which is I didn't come into this thinking it would be something that would necessarily change much or that would have an impact, but I think also alcohol has played a big part. I've not gone teetotal or anything like that, but for big chunks of when we've been working together, I've almost drunk nothing. But equally, I think it's just that realization of when you are drinking, or when you do drink regularly, the impact that has is huge, and it's actually quite hard to keep hold of your head if you're in a bad place, if you are drinking. And then beyond that, it's just also just, I think for me, I think when I'm doing exercise and I'm trying to look after myself and I've got habits and I've got structures through the early part of my day in particular, it sets the whole of the rest of the day up much, much better. And it puts you in a better mental place to then deal with whatever shit gets thrown at you, of course, across the rest of the day. And whether that's work stuff or home stuff or Lexi's playing up or whatever's going on, you've started in a better place. And I think also just, some of the other sort of techniques and things we've talked about, and ways to handle situations, and just being more sort of self-aware of all of this stuff. And I think that's maybe that word or two words is the crux of it, is becoming self-aware. And it's self-aware about exercise, it's self-aware about nutrition, it's self-aware about how you're behaving, it's self-aware about your actions have consequences. So think about it before you do it. Doesn't mean don't do it, it's up to you.
Yeah.
But think about it. And it's that self-awareness, I think, which you'd think, some people might listen and go, well, why don't you have that anyway? But I think most people sort of lose it as you get older, and you don't have that self-awareness. You almost have to learn it, and you have to it becomes sort of part of you just to be very, very consciously aware of what you're doing and why you're doing it. And I think that for me, that's, I don't know, maybe I'm rambling a bit, but I think that sort of is almost like the crux of it, is self-awareness to act properly, and that what you do has an impact.
I would completely agree, and you weren't rambling at all. So self-awareness, you could also call that being more intentional, being more conscious. I'm not saying any of those other words I just said are right or wrong. I'm just that kind of state.
It's that sort of stuff. Yeah.
And it's a common theme that's been coming up in the program, on the calls, and as I think about what I do and how I work with people, and ultimately how you want to feel better in your life. And I think that feeling that like life's just passing me by, I'm going through the motions, or Friday again after a shit week, and just feeling like everything's trudging over, and that strange feeling that a lot of people can have in the modern life, which is it's all great on paper, but. And then the but is that I don't feel very happy and content. And I think that stems from a lack of self-awareness, intentionality, and I guess investment in yourself within your life. Because if you're more conscious and aware of what you're doing, how you're behaving, and the impact that has, you're more engaged and active within your own life. Be that how you exercise, be that what you put in your mouth, be that how you greet your wife, be that how you pick up your daughter, be that how you talk to your teammates, be that how you behave yourself, be that the commitments you make to yourself, be that the decisions you make. Like, all of those things have an impact. But if we're just a bit more aware and conscious around what we do, you're just fundamentally more invested in what you're doing, and that's where life can feel a bit richer. And I think, and you haven't said this yet, Scott, but it's a common thing that comes up a lot, is that, oh, well, nothing else has changed, but I feel miles better, or that was a shit week and I feel okay. And I think that's where you can have that weird sort of dichotomy, because it's like, well, we haven't changed anything in life. It's like, no, it's you and your ability to deal with things, be resilient, but also just be more aware of yourself, the impact you have on yourself and others. But in doing that, not in an obsessive, I'm totally obsessing over what I'm doing and, you know, kind of like looking at all these things that I need to do in a way which is sort of neurotic, more so than just I'm being a bit more conscious and intentional about what I do. And I think that actually feels better, because when we're just drifting through, getting pulled around, ragged around by the vicissitudes of life, like that doesn't feel great. Whereas if you're just more conscious and intentional, well, then you feel like you're in control of what you can, but also you feel more responsible for what you do. And I think ultimately that breeds a better headspace in how you feel. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
It absolutely does, 100%. And it flows into all aspects of your life as well. And I think a big part of it, Luke, is, and you know, I was quite skeptical, I guess, at the start of the program around the sort of, you know, I guess there's quite a lot of focus on that sort of early part of your day, and that has become so important to me. But I was quite skeptical of it at the start, because I was sort of like, well, you know, busy days, I get up, but looking back now, you know, my mornings used to be, you know, get out of bed sort of on the last minute, through the shower, rush to get out the house, slightly stressed. Am I going to catch the train or am I not going to catch the train?
Yeah.
You know, so by the time you're at the office, you're sort of already sort of in a pretty bad place. You've done nothing good to start your day. You've been slightly stressed. The whole thing's been a bit of a rush, and sort of totally pulling that back and actually buying time for yourself in the morning. And it's also, it's not just what you do. So yeah, obviously doing exercise is a good thing, whatever it might be, having a cold shower, doing all these bits and pieces, but it's also just actually just that headspace, that time at the start of the day which is just to you. And you know, the rest of the day is full on work, crazy. You don't know what's going to get thrown at you. You don't know how the rest of your day is going to play out. You might have plans to get home at a sensible time, and that just goes, you know, completely to shit outside of your control.
Yeah.
All of that stuff. You've also, you know, then there's, you know, when you come home, you've got a young baby, so Nicola's been looking after it all day, so you know, you need to help, you need to do whatever you can. There's lots going on, so just suddenly having that sort of hour in the morning where you just got time to yourself to do your own thing, it's just, yeah, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, again, I would totally agree. There's magic in that, and perhaps it's part of it, I guess, is dependent on the phase of life you're in, right? And so when you're 20 or 25 or even 30, you've got no responsibilities, whatever else, but you can kind of crash around in that, and it's less important. I mean, I would challenge having some structure to your morning is a helpful thing anyway, but there's other things, there's less demands and stresses on your life. The stage of life that we're at, Scott, like early 40s, and the gents I work with all the way through to mid 50s, and I've got a couple of outliers. We've got a gentleman in the moment who's like 72, fair play. But that's an outlier, right? But that stage of life, it is busy, it is hectic. Most people, it involves kids and more senior at work and more responsibility. So time is condensed. And so your day can quite easily run away with you. And a lot of that, the way it runs away with you, isn't necessarily within your control. Whereas actually at the start of your day, within reason, and elements of that are within your control and more control than you think. And ticking a load of boxes for yourself, having some, I would call, me time, at the start of your day, I think it's really powerful, because then that sets the tone for you. And so then whatever life chucks in your face, good or bad, you're better armed to deal with it. Now, maybe in 10 years' time, when the kids are a bit older and life's more manic, might I be able to get up a bit later and do some different stuff? But maybe. But like right now, for most of the guys that we're talking about within the stage of life we're at, I think there is absolute magic in the morning. And it's not like a 5 a.m. club, you know, because we're all just stroking our navels and banging gongs. And no, because it's fucking practical. Stay up until midnight and watch Netflix and have half a bottle of wine, right? Then see how tomorrow goes. I'd challenge that ain't going to serve you very well. If you can adapt it and not do that bit, get up a bit earlier, well then, and do some things that are productive for yourself, straight away you feel better. And I think that's just powerful. And maybe there's always a compromise in life, right? You can have anything you want, you just can't have everything. Well, okay, I would love to stay up a bit later, watch a bit of telly, whatever else, but I know that isn't going to serve me. So I'm going to get my me time at a different part of the day because that serves me better. And like you said, the self-esteem that comes from walking out the door, having maybe done a bit of exercise, chuck yourself under something cold, sitting in the thought, but just ask yourself into a fucking time when no one else is awake, no one's talking to you, and it's just a bit calmer. That's good for the, sounds wanky, for the soul, but it's also good for you, you know.
It is, yeah.
But I think maybe where you were and where lots of guys are, that, oh, I'm just not a morning person. How could I possibly do that? Because what you described, just running out the door. Well, you're right. That is really difficult. Oh, so I can't. I can't do anything in the morning. I'm not a morning person. Okay. Should we have a look at your evening? What's happening there? Oh, there we go. We've got 15 things we can maybe change there. Let's maybe address those and see if we're a morning person. And I know it sounds a bit trite and I'm being facetious, but in my experience, most of the time, that's what's going on. But again, we can't always see it, and that's the bit where you feel stuck, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think the other thing that about the sort of, you know, sorting out the morning as the starting point is it actually, and I remember I sort of I had this sort of conversation with you quite early about, you know, the time in my day and, you know, blah, 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 you know, I work long hours, this, that, and the other. And you rightly challenged me in the sort of way you just described. But what it actually does is it actually teaches you about time management and about prioritization. And what I've found through sorting out the morning piece is actually it's shifted my mindset around also the rest of my day as well. So, you know, where it is possible to, at times, now obviously, look, stuff happens, shit hits the fan and you can't do anything about it, and that's fine. But day to day, lots of days, you can manage your time and you can buy yourself moments in the day. And that's even like goes down to like really basic things, like in the middle of a busy day at work is leaving the office at lunchtime and just going for a walk, even if it's for 20 minutes. But it's that sort of stuff. Like if you'd asked me, you know, pretty much every single day, could you go for a 20 to 30-minute walk in the middle of your day at work? If you'd asked me that in January, I'd have
Absolutely no way.
Not a chance, Luke. Like,
You're talking shit. Exactly.
You don't understand how busy I am. You don't understand how crazy it is. Blah blah blah, and it's bullshit. And it's learning. And I think the starting with the morning piece, because that is the one bit you can control, because you just can set your alarm a bit earlier. You know, that's true. But so it buys you that, which is great. But it also starts teaching actually, wait a minute. If I can do this, what else in the day is there?
Yeah.
What else is there space? What else can I do? It's just interesting. It's just my mindset around managing my time and prioritizing my time has shifted massively in the last 6 to 7 months.
It's getting your foot in the door, metaphorically, in some of these things. I don't have any time. Okay, is that true? So the example I always give, it's really trite, which is, I don't have time to exercise. Okay, can you do one push-up when you get out of bed? Of course I can. Well, you've got time to exercise then, haven't you? So well, it's true. And you're like, yeah, but nothing. So we've just proved that wrong. So, and if we apply that concept kind of anywhere, well, then you realise there's probably always something I can do. I do have more control and agency than I thought I did. It might not be the thing we want to do, but it's something. And so I think if you start to carve and eke out time in the morning, get a better structure there, you go, well, hold up a second, I just started with that and I said I couldn't do that and now I can. I was about, maybe I'd just go for a 5-minute walk and leave my desk to clear my head. Oh, I could do that. Oh. And then in doing that, well, maybe what I need to do is not commit to those 2 meetings that I didn't really need to be in, because if I'm being honest, it's me micromanaging, so I'll let them do that bit. That email that I've just responded to, I didn't actually need to reply to that. Maybe I need to set a boundary there, because actually I need to unpick that just like I unpick my evening. Well, then maybe I can do my walk. And so this is where it almost sort of starts to come together, and this is why it's all holistic. So it's like, what is doing some exercise in the morning got to do with you being more productive and better at work? Kind of everything. And so, and then that's why looking at things holistically and going, well, because some guys I might speak to them and they're in knowledge work like yourself, maybe they're not physically that unfit, but they reckon everything's a bit pear-shaped. It's like, well, I just need to sort my mindset out. It's like, yeah. Well, how do you do that? You do that through behaviour and showing yourself certain things. And so sometimes for someone like that, doing a cold shower in the morning and committing to it and finding the time to do that, or finding the time to do some exercise, that shows them that, oh, I can make this time here. So perhaps I could take that mindset and that concept and apply it somewhere else. And that's what mindset is. I think some people think, I want a new mindset. It doesn't fucking exist. It's an emergent property of your behaviour and what you do. And so that's predicated on what you build out in the day. And so if you start to show yourself in certain areas you can do things one place, well, that can apply in another area. Like setting a boundary so you come home and more present and listen to your wife and kids. Well, then, yeah, but I'm a bit short and snappy at work and micromanage. Well, I've just demonstrated that I can be more present and listen at home. Maybe I can apply some of that in work. And this is where it becomes a bit more 360. Does that make sense?
It does 100%. And I think that's exactly what I've found. And it's funny because and probably because I was in, a bit of a funk back at the start of the year. But, through nothing that we have directly talked about per se, in terms of life at work and how and what's going on there, like my productivity and efficiency and sort of targeting of what I'm doing has improved massively, and it's sort of showing in results again at the moment, and it's interesting. It's that sort of almost like that you said, that subconscious way that once you start putting some of these practices in place, they sort of through osmosis they sort of filter into other parts of your life.
Totally. Well, because also, like, it just like, if you just conceptually said this, let's split test it, right? So you got exactly the same person, right? Person A's got up, done a little bit of exercise, had a cold shower, had a nice morning with his wife and daughter, had a nice interaction, not being straight on his phone, feeling healthy, looking in the mirror, feeling proud of himself, not hungover, feeling fresh, walks through the door at work, right? Exactly the same person scrapes out of bed after 3 alarm pauses, slightly fuzzy head because he's hungover, shouts at his missus because the baby's woken him up and he shouldn't have, and he deserves to sleep in because he's the one who's working, storms out the house, just gets the train, runs through the thing, looks in the mirror, feels a bit shit, oh, you look fat. Right. Now, which version of those do we think is going to perform better at work? And so, like, and you say, well, of course, but like, I don't know why, but sometimes conceptually people don't sort of draw those parallels, and it's like, well, to think that that's not going to be a different person is mad. Like, now, of course, there is very acute career-based stuff you need to do to be good at your job, but like, if we can say probably most of the guys I work with are pretty successful, doing quite well, well, like, maybe be version A and see how work looks, feels, and all the people there, and everyone's a bastard. I guarantee version A, probably everyone didn't feel like they were a bastard and getting at you, but work was the same than it was 6 months ago. Do you see what I mean? And I think, and when you pull it out like that, most people go, yeah, of course, version A. But like, I think when you're stuck in that, you don't necessarily see that.
Yeah, you don't exactly, and it's exactly that. You don't see the wood from the trees. And again, it's probably true. And you saying it like that and sort of setting out like that, it's so obvious now, and it's obvious to me now. But again, if you'd sort of said to me in January, but Scott, putting in some of these building blocks we're talking about early on in the course, and getting fitter, doing this, it will have a material impact on your performance at work. I'd have been like, wow, will it? I know what I'm doing at work, so what? It's not going to make me know what I'm doing any better. And I'd have been sort of, I'd have pushed back on you. I would. I know I would have done. Yeah.
And that's the thing. And so that. But I think, and most of the guys I speak to, they're not joining my kind of coaching because of the work piece. If anything, it's like, well, work's fine, but that's it. But then when you start to feel better, you go, well, work maybe wasn't as fine as I thought it was actually. And actually, I am showing up as better there. And that's where it could, because. Yeah, the way I think about this is like, as an athlete, let's say we were just talking about an athlete who was about to do a track run, play out those exact two examples, who's going to perform better? Well, of course, an athlete would be able to, well, why is it any different for life? Like, it's the same stuff, right? Well, look, Scott, I know you're a busy man, so I don't want to cannibalise any more of your time. I've really enjoyed the conversation, and I really appreciate you coming on and talking. Before we get off, do you have any parting thoughts or comments for anyone listening? Like, maybe someone was feeling like you were back then, struggling a little bit. What would you say to somebody kind of in that kind of situation as you sit right now today?
Sure. I think what I'd say is, I think going right back to the start of the conversation we've just had, which is, until you do something, nothing is going to change. So, and I think the other thing is the most difficult thing, I guess, is probably making that phone call to whoever it might be, someone like yourself, Luke, and sort of saying, yeah, look, I'm not in a good place. What could you do to help me? And start opening your mind to the idea that you could do with some help to sort this out. And the other thing I'd say is, don't be intimidated by it, because I know, blokes in particular probably, and certainly I was, you're sort of sitting there thinking, oh, I'm unfit, I'm in a bad place, I'm all over the place, blah, blah, blah. But then also the idea, and I've talked to you about this, the idea of sort of stepping into some insane physical exercise thing is actually very intimidating, because you're aware that you're really not capable of doing it. But the way your course works and the building blocks you put in, and it's across a number of different things, it isn't intimidating at all, and it's not impossible, and it's not like on week one you step in and go, you get blasted with loads of stuff. So
Yeah.
what I would say to people is, if you want to change something, you've got to do something about it. You've got to start the process of making the change, and doing it with someone like yourself. It's actually not a scary or intimidating or like overwhelming process. It's gradual, it's stepping stones, it builds up, and it puts everything in place. So it's actually something you don't do it because you're fearful that you can't do it, because everyone definitely can do what you do for them in their course. Nothing in it is impossible.
Well, thank you for that, Scott. That's a pretty good endorsement if ever there was one. But and of course I'm going to say I agree because it's what I do. But it's true. If nothing changes, nothing changes. And I truly believe, parking what I do or not, if you want to make changes, I think small commitments, incrementally based, are how you build those foundations. Sometimes grand sweeping things can work acutely to achieve a very specific result, but if you're not looking at the fundamental issues as to what's caused you to feel, look, operate as you were in the first place, you end up stuck spinning your wheels. And so, if for anyone's listening, if they're starting a process, whatever it is, if it feels scary, insurmountable, and absolutely terrifying, probably you need to think about what you're doing, and maybe it's not fit for purpose, because it doesn't need to feel like that. And especially if you're busy, kids, travel, life, all that kind of stuff, like, all those things need to be taken into account. And so if something's going to happen, or that you want to make a change and you're like, oh my God, how can I fit this in? That's the wrong way to look at it. It needs to complement all of that. None of your life is going anywhere. And so it needs to fit in. Like Scott said, if you are not feeling your best, sort of struggling a bit with what's going on, everything feels insurmountable, what I would say is take a step back. Like Scott said, first, to be honest, like actually pretending it's all fine when it isn't going to help you. Okay, yes, I need to make a change. And then just look, like, what small thing could I do? Like, where am I showing up with a repeating set of habits and behaviours that I don't like? And if they keep happening, well, firstly, that's a little light you can shine and have a look at and go, okay, well, there's something there. And then rather than just stopping and saying it's because I'm lazy or I'm a piece of shit or I can't be arsed, go, well, why might that be happening? Because I was tired. Okay, well, why were you tired? Because I was up till midnight. Why were you up till midnight? Because I got in late from work and I replied to an email. And so, of course, the way I work is we can help you pull that thread and look at it. But if you start to be more inquisitive with yourself and look at those areas, you can find and establish what's going on. And so, yes, you can engage with a coach about that, but also you can do it with yourself. And what you'll find is when you get to the root of what it is, it's probably not a big, scary, crazy thing you need to do to address it, but you just need to work out what that is. And for me, that's where real change happens. So, on that note, Scott, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Thank you. I really appreciate it. If anyone else is watching and listening, give us a shout if you're interested. Otherwise, we'll see you all next week. Cheers.
Cheers.